the gym women, the attire is crazy.
A lot of times when I go to the gym, women are wearing a lot of like revealing clothing.
So now y'all be so locked in the gym that you're not paying attention to people coming in there half naked or having a camel toe on the leg press machine. And what we are saying is that your outfit is inappropriate.
Ain't nothing wrong with dressing a little covered up. Don't nobody gotta see everything every single time.
Everywhere you look, clothes are getting tighter, shorter, and in some cases, they're barely there. From the gym to the red carpet, we're showing more skin than ever before. And as an unexpected result, men seem to be spiraling. But here's a bigger question. Are women being empowered by barely there dressing, or are we playing into systems that still don't serve us? Does dressing hypersexually actually get us what we want? Respect, love, and power, or just more attention we didn't ask for? Is the backlash from men proof that we're winning, or that we're still being watched, judged, and objectified? Nobody wears clothes anymore, but in a world that's obsessed with how we present, what does that really mean for women, and why are men losing their minds over it? Hi babes, my name's Taja, mother of twins, lover of luxe things, and your guide for showing up with style and intention. Over the last decade, especially since the popularity of social media has increased, we have seen the rise of barely there dressing in the mainstream. You can't spend more than 10 minutes on social media without seeing somebody in something sheer, mesh, or lingerie inspired. And social media has definitely been pushing the boundaries of what counts as clothing.
I feel like it's oversaturated. Every time I get on the internet, it's always something. Like, I can guarantee that there's a video that's gonna slip up in my page that's just overly sexual, or a woman is, even if she's making a joke, like talking about her sexual escapades and what she does, and it's just like, it's none of our business.
I think that this has been born out of social media and attention turning into currency. So there are many people who will pretty much do anything for some attention, especially on the internet, because not only can it be gratifying for some emotionally, but also you can make loads of money, right? Being online, wearing not much. We can see with apps like OF and places that are similar, there does seem to be a general interest from men and women in seeing social media figures or celebrity figures with less and less clothes on. And so in years gone by, there used to be particular places that you could go, either in person or online, to view this type of content. But as time has passed, it seems that the line between what would be maybe perceived as more adult content and what was perceived as more mainstream content seems to be a bit blurred. I think part of the reason for this is that for areas or platforms that are dedicated to older forms of content tend to have barriers to access, right? And usually it's to protect the kids. But as a consequence, it means that you're not able to get in front of as many eyes as maybe you would like. And so if you're able to make maybe a more revealing YouTube video that doesn't necessarily cover all of your more private parts, then creators tend to be inclined to make that kind of content where they can, even if it's just to direct them to other platforms like OF. Also, the idea of wanting to be a celebrity or wanting to be treated like a celebrity, to live a celebrity life, is not necessarily a new concept. It's what some everyday men have dreamed about for decades at this point, right? When Hollywood was very popular and being a Hollywood star was very popular, there were always more everyday people, some more talented than others, who would do anything they could to get into that position. And actually how concepts like the American dream were created, the idea that you can be anyone you want to be if you are just able to do the thing. And it seems that in 2025, the thing that you have to do, especially if you're a woman, is be overly sexualized.
Isn't it so crazy that feminism does the exact opposite of empowering women? It is not giving you freedom, it is actually silencing you. It has convinced women that sexualization is freedom, that selling their bodies online is freedom, that having multiple partners is freedom. But what this actually does is exploit you and enslave you.
I also think that this has partly to do with the younger generations trying to push what's acceptable. And I don't necessarily think that this is just a Gen Z thing. At any point in time, most younger generations tend to question and push the boundaries of what's acceptable during the time of their youth. actually at this point think it's almost a rite of passage when you're trying to figure out things, trying to figure out why things are acceptable, should they be acceptable, do I want to live within those constraints, all of those kinds of things. However, I think that this conversation has a little bit more fire under its butt because of the ability for us all to speak to each other online. And so now you're not necessarily speaking to just your friends or the younger people that you might meet at your local youth club. You're going online and you're speaking to people from all across the world with all different types of access, all different types of cultures. And I think it has pushed Gen Zers to really critically think about the social norms that they live within and whether they find them to be acceptable. However, I think many young people have been parented by a generation who really wanted to give them a life or social experiences that they didn't have, which I don't actually think is particularly unusual. However, I think part of what the younger generation have been taught is that it is okay to be you. And I definitely understand the sentiment because it is okay to be you. However, I think that this has been pushed into don't ever worry about what anyone else thinks, wear the clothes that you want, wear them how you want, where you want. And it's got so extreme that the men are complaining. Okay, and women and sometimes men who are online without much on usually try to push the narrative that it has absolutely nothing to do with attention. If you feel the need to look at me because I don't have much on or I'm dressed in an over-sexual way, then that is a you problem. It's just about self-expression. It's about feeling liberated. And it's about challenging the norms, which in ideal land, I can totally understand. However, in reality, I think we're just slightly off track. And if I'm honest with you, I am always critical of when a man speaks. And in 2025, I think some men would do better if they were able to keep their mouths closed. Okay. However, I think that the conversation that some men are having around over-sexualized dress, especially in the gym, are actually quite fair.
Than women. Some of the the outfits, I'm like, man, what the? You in the gym like that?
I think as it relates to over-sexualized dress, especially in places that are very male dominated, like the gym, they may have a point. I'm not saying that gyms should be male dominated. And I'm also not saying that women should have to consider how they dress when they go to the gym. However, that is a perspective that I would hold if I were talking about the ideal world, right? In the ideal world, women should be able to dress however they want, wear whatever they want, and not have to consider what anyone thinks about what they've got on. And what they've got on or what they look like shouldn't affect how they are treated, shouldn't affect anything really, because what is the big deal? It's just clothes. However, more and more studies have proven that it actually isn't just about clothes. And for some time now, there has been an ongoing conversation about how some women choose to dress in the gym. Is it too provocative? Should women be asked to cover up in the gym? Are men in the gym held to the same standard? Why does anyone care about what anyone wears in the gym? Aren't we all supposed to be focused on our workouts? Okay, and most of those ideas are actually quite fair in my opinion. However, I don't think that they are rooted in reality. I am in the gym all the time, at least 4 to 5 times a week. And when I go into the gym, I choose to present in a way that is more modest. And I choose to dress that way because it's how I feel more comfortable. I also don't enjoy prying eyes, especially whilst I'm working out at the gym. Now, I know that there are tons of conversations about, no matter how you dress at the gym, you will get attention from men, which I understand. Even when I'm in the gym dressed modestly, I still have a few culprits that like to hold eye contact. There is something that is innate within humans. That means that they are often looking for partners. And there are some humans who are able to control that urge or who have been taught to control that urge more than others, right? So there's always going to be outliers. There are always going to be men who will find a way to sexualize you if that is what they want to do. However, I don't think that there is an issue with being mindful about how you present in particular environments and informing and equipping yourself with an understanding of what you might expect in those environments. This is not to say that what you might expect is right or is nice or is fair, but it is what you might expect in those environments. A 2016 study called The Men's Perception of Women's Sexual Interest found that on average, men judge women in more provocative clothing as showing more sexual interest. Even when other cues, such as facial expression, say the same. The clothing's provocativeness had a moderate effect. Also, the environment and attractiveness strongly affected perceptions. So there are men and women in all environments are making judgments about you based on the way that you look. Right? So when I go into the gym, I have an understanding that some men, just as this study has demonstrated, will look at me if I go into the gym in maybe something that is very revealing, right? They're going to look at me and presume that I have some kind of sexual interest in them just because of the way that I look. I know, sounds very strange, right? But I think that knowledge is power. And so, although strange, because you would think that they would be able to have the awareness to consider all the other cues as well. However, research has shown that some men, or even the majority of men, right, because these studies are able to pick up themes and trends within their research outcomes. So on average, out of the men that they study, what they have found is that men presume that you are interested in them sexually based on the way that you dress. And so in general, I think women's gym attire is fine, right? You're going to wear leggings and maybe a vest top or something like that, right? I think it's fine. However, as social media grows, we just seem to be working in extremes. You might see a gym influencer online who is wearing something that looks a bit more like underwear, right? Maybe very, very, very short shorts, maybe a very, very tiny string bra top, and think she looks cute. She has loads of followers. I like her outfit. Where did she get it from? I can click the link. I can buy exactly what she's got on, and I'm going to go to the local gym with that outfit on. And I don't think everyone is using their discernment as much as they could. These social media creators, especially those with loads and loads of followers, have a business, right? So they're going to the gym to do a job, which is film. And they have analytics on the back end that will tell them what type of content performs well. So they may in fact even start off with a gym account where they're wearing what I would call average gym attire, and maybe they make some content where they're wearing a little less, and they realize from their analytics that when they were wearing a little less, they got more attention. And so give it a few months and all of their content is them in the gym in interesting positions, wearing not much clothes, showing how to do different workouts. And their community looks at their content and thinks, wow, she looks so confident, her body looks so nice, I love her outfit, I want to be like her. Maybe I even might go to the gym and film myself and grow a following. And so I think we have just reached an extreme with some of the ways that we are choosing to over-sexualize ourselves and the delusion that we seem to have developed around the importance of what we look like. And guys, I totally understand the idea that men really need to be responsible for themselves and they need to develop the ability to control themselves and do the right thing, right? Which probably is a totally separate conversation to this video, but I agree that they do need to do some self-work, okay? They need to do some internal work, I agree. However, I don't think that that absolves us of the responsibility to be intentional with the way that we choose to present ourselves and the way that we choose to dress. And so when I go to the gym, my aim is to work out unbothered without any distractions. I don't actually even want anyone talking to me. Okay, I don't want you talking to me. I don't want you looking at me. Okay, I don't want you bothering me. I may want to be cute. I actually need to do some shopping for some more gym clothes. I may want to be cute. However, my desire to be cute isn't as high as my desire to not be bothered. And so I dress accordingly. Would I like to work out with something really, really cute on and look really pretty and do all the things? Sometimes, probably, yeah, depending on the workout. I usually go to the gym to sweat, but depending on the workout, I'm sure I would enjoy doing that. However, I understand that we are not living in ideal land, and so I make sure that I do what I need to do to feel comfortable and to, where I can, move the attention away from being sexualized when I'm at the gym. Another study that looked at the relationship between sexualized appearance and perceptions of women's competency and electability found that revealing clothing led to more time looking at sexualized body parts. That in turn was associated with lower perceived trustworthiness, honesty, competency, and electability. The bit here that I found most interesting was the finding that revealing clothes led to more time looking at sexualized body parts. Okay, so if I'm at the gym and my sexualized body parts are out or in clear view or on display, chances are there are going to be more men who spend more time focused on those body parts because of the way that I'm dressed. Okay, and is that what we want? That's not what, well, maybe that's what some people want, but that's absolutely not what I want. I think we've got to a stage where what we say we want and how we get what we want aren't really aligned, because we say we don't want to be over-sexualized. We say that we don't want unwanted attention. You know, we don't want to be harassed at the gym. We absolutely do not want to be harassed at the gym. We don't want to feel unsafe at the gym. And there is a part of this problem that we absolutely cannot fix. If a man wants to aggress against a woman and, you know, he left his house in the morning and that's what he decided he wanted to do, he will find a way to do it. But again, that does not mean that we can't be mindful about how we decide to move. And I know in loads of conversations that's almost framed as a burden, a bad thing. You know, why should we have to think about how we move? It's a man's issue. However, I don't think it has to feel that way. It can actually be empowering to be informed, to understand that no, it's not ideal. No, in a lot of ways, it's not even right. Will it guarantee you safety in the gym? No, I don't think anything can guarantee you safety anywhere. However, doing what you need to do to reduce the probabilities of being perceived in a particular way is not negative. I see a lot of these conversations being framed as almost victim blaming, like you're blaming the women for the behavior of the men. And that's absolutely not what I'm doing. Again, we can't control all of what other people do. However, there are ways that you can influence how people perceive you. And you can influence how people perceive you with things like how you speak, how you dress, how you walk, your aura. All of these things affect the way that people treat you. If somebody's looking for an argument, for example, there's going to be a reason why they choose to pick an argument with one person and not somebody else. The general themes found within these types of studies show that men often misinterpret sexualized clothing or signals of sexual interest, even when other cues suggest otherwise, which oftentimes lead to misinterpreted or unwanted advances. Sexualization can also lead to emotional dehumanization, seeing women more as objects than people. So thinking critically about how you dress, how you present yourself, can say something about how you would like to be treated. So what do you think about over-sexualized dress, especially in places like the gym? And do you have any thoughts about men commenting on it? I know that this might be quite a controversial one, so would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below.